Welcome to Television Sydney News. I'm KRYSTYNA Pollard. It's great to have you with us. In this week's bulletin, Australian politicians criticised for their treatment of asylum seekers, the M5 filtration system to continue despite only a minor effect on air quality, and a new exhibition focuses on women in sport. But first, Prime Minister Julia Gillard will embark on a week-long visit to Western Sydney in a bid to save the seats that could decide September's federal election. Reports say Ms Gillard will begin her whirlwind tour with a speech at the University of Western Sydney, and it's understood she'll spend her time in the Parramatta, Fowler, Lindsay, Greenway and Banks electorates. Parramatta MP Julie Owens, who holds the seat by 4.4%, says the more time Ms Gillard and other leaders spend in Western Sydney, the better. Financial Services and Superannuation Minister Bill Shorten visited Parramatta to launch an employment guide for skilled migrants this week. The government holds the seat of Greenway, which includes suburbs in Blacktown, by less than 1%, while the Penrith seat of Lindsay is held by 1.1%. The Prime Minister will also stay in the West overnight during the week, and speculation is rife that she'll be based at Rooty Hill RSL. Opposition leader Tony Abbott is expected to shadow Ms Gillard in her travels. A Tamil community activist says Australian politicians have lost all sense of compassion for asylum seekers following an alleged sexual assault. Saradha Nathan says she's disappointed by the reactions of some politicians to a refugee being charged with sexual assault after an incident at Macquarie University. It was reported this week a group of 10 Sri Lankan men, including the 21-year-old who was charged, were relocated from student housing near the university to a commercial building in Parramatta's CBD. Ms Nathan said the refugees were treated unfairly if they were moved as a result of the incident, and all refugees shouldn't be tarred with the same brush. Her comments followed calls from opposition immigration spokesman Scott Morrison accusing the government of not keeping track of asylum seekers once they had entered the country. He also suggested communities should be notified when asylum seekers move in. There were reports that Parramatta Council workers later raided the building the refugees had moved to, but the Red Cross, which is responsible for housing the men, will not confirm where they had been moved. A spokeswoman says they were moved out of the student housing because the semester is starting and that the charity is winding up its short-term accommodation arrangements with the university. The air filtration plant in the M5 East Main Tunnel will operate for a further 3 months while authorities implement a crackdown on truck exhaust fumes. Roads Minister Duncan Gay says fines of $2,000 as well as vehicle registration suspensions were part of a new enforcement program to catch operators of smoky vehicles. Last year, the state government announced the $65 million filtration system would be shut down after an 18-month trial found it had only a minor effect on air quality. Mr Gay says the government will publish air quality data for the tunnel on the RMS website. 20 bushwalkers were rescued from the Blue Mountains following heavy downpours on Monday. 9 people were stranded near Wentworth Falls after water rose 2 metres in a short time, and police had to use safety lines to escort them through the torrent. Warragamba Dam, which accounts for 80% of Sydney's water supply, was filled to capacity on Monday night following the heavy rain. It's only the 3rd time water has been released from the central drum gate of the dam since 1999. Western Sydney Council's renewed calls for the government to change the operating rules of Warragamba Dam after automatic releases caused minor flooding and road closures in the Nepean Hawkesbury Valley. Wattle Grove residents fear the site of a defence facility is contaminated and its relocation to Holsworthy is exposing them to risks. The Defence Storage National Distribution Centre in Moorebank is known to contain asbestos and other soil contaminants from a former ammunition warehouse. Since the works began earlier last month, Wattle Grove has been covered in a haze of dust, according to resident Roy Carter. Federal and state MPs have visited the site and raised safety concerns with Defence, which says the asbestos is being removed by a licensed contractor. Defence says the work will stop if it becomes excessively windy. A landmark urban forest of more than 500 pine trees at Caringbah has been cut down to make way for an industrial subdivision. The 30-metre tall trees on Kawarra Road will eventually be replaced with 600 native trees, while a further 600 trees will be planted in surrounding streets and along the Kingsway. Sutherland Shire says the radiata pines are an imported species with low ecological value. But local businessman Peter Thorburn says he and many others will miss the green outlook with all the birds coming and going. A Penshurst resident has succeeded in having Hurstville Council drop plans for his 20-year-old house to be considered for heritage listing. Draftsman Charles McAuliffe built his Cambridge Street home in 1993, but a council report said the house was started in 1886 and completed in 1920. The council dropped the plan after Mr McAuliffe commissioned a professional report. The backflip was a win for worried residents, as the council also decided not to put other streets in North Beverly Hills or Mortdale on the heritage list. Blacktown Youth Services Association has introduced a workshop to harness the talents of young people while simultaneously fighting graffiti vandalism. Charlene Bazina, known as Spice, is the veteran street artist who teaches the class. She says the project is a necessity because of graffiti problems in the area. She hopes the program will make the distinctions between illegal graffiti, tagging and public art clear to the young participants. Petrol heads will flock to Eastern Creek this month to attend the highly anticipated Top Gear Festival. Taking place on March 9 and 10, car lovers from across Australia and around the world are expected to attend the festival at Sydney Motorsport Park. British Top Gear hosts Jeremy Clarkson and James May, as well as the Stig, will join Australian co-host Shane Jacobson and a list of international celebrities for 9 hours of live automotive action.
Because of the madness, that's actually what it is. You put Jeremy Clarkson, James May and myself to a degree as well on a racetrack with a whole bunch of race cars. Mark Webber in a Formula 1 car, an aeroplane that races a car. You bring Craig Lange, you grab Fabian Coulthard and you grab all the touring car masters, throw them all on a racetrack and go berserk. I reckon that's a pretty good recipe. Highlights of the festival will include Australian Formula 1 driver Mark Webber attempting to break the lap record of 1 minute and 19 seconds in his Red Bull F1 racer. Clarkson and May will attempt to speed up the Express Postal Service with the Postie Bike Challenge, and the Stig will set power lap times in rare supercars. I took my beautiful partner Felicity to a V8 touring car race, and I took her to the Formula 1 Grand Prix, and she had never been to those events before, and she said the spectacle, the atmosphere was electric. The fact that we're going to combine all that at one festival, I think you just got to be a wanter of fun. Sydney Motorsport Park will be hosting the high-profile motoring festival from 2013 through to 2015 after securing a 3-year deal with the assistance of Destination New South Wales and the New South Wales Government. Sydney's flying fox population copped a beating in January, with the hot weather killing thousands. Wise carer Kate Ryan looks after the survivors at her St Andrews home. She says Campbelltown's flying foxes are now searching for food in backyards as the recent heavy rain washed the pollen they feed on out of the trees. Gardeners are urged to use net mounted on a frame rather than draped over their fruit trees to prevent injuring flying foxes. More than 200 people swam laps to raise money for cystic fibrosis at this year's Macarthur Swimathon. The organisers reached their target of $100,000 just hours into the day-long event held at the Wollondilly Leisure Centre. Swimmers were sponsored based on how many laps they swam. The day raised a total of $110,000 in aid of Cystic Fibrosis New South Wales, the Children's Hospital Westmead and Randwick Children's Hospital. The day even featured a bombing competition, with prizes going to those who made the biggest splash. And in sport, the Western Sydney Wanderers won their 7th consecutive A-League game when they beat the Perth Glory 1-0 at Parramatta Stadium last weekend. Just 5 months after making their debut, the Wanderers are now 1 point away from competition frontrunners Central Coast Mariners, who they'll face on Saturday. Striker Mark Bridge says he and his teammates were happy with their current form, but warned the Wanderers can play even better.
On a bit of a roll at the moment. The last couple of weeks we probably haven't been at our best, but we've still got the results, so once we turn that around, it's only going to get better.
Coach Tony Popovic downplayed premature talk of a debut season premiership, insisting his team is only thinking 1 week at a time.
We haven't spoke about anything in terms of position or looking ahead. That's the way we work. We can't look ahead because we have to continue doing our job.
Tickets to the third and final Sydney derby of the regular A-League season sold out in just 38 minutes, the second sold-out match between the two sides this season. The Ponds resident Liam Cadden is among dozens of cyclists who'll take to the roads in Sunday's Tour de Hills Cycling Challenge, starting at Rouse Hill Town Centre. The annual event, which offers riders stages of 100, 60, 30 or 13 kilometres, raises money for Kellyville-based hearing centre Hear the Children. As part of his preparation, Mr Cadden has been riding to and from work and doing the Tour de Hills course at weekends. The 100-kilometre event is sponsored by the Hills News and the Rouse Hill Stanhope Gardens News and gets underway at 7:30am. Teenager Jake Doran has been selected in the Australian Under-19 cricket squad to tour New Zealand next month. The 16-year-old joins the squad as the #1 wicketkeeper and one of the top-order batsmen on the tour. Australia will play one 3-day game and 3 50-over matches. The Fairfield Liverpool first grader is the second youngest player to make his debut. The build-up to Australia's biggest harness race is almost over. The Inter-Dominion Grand Final, known as the Melbourne Cup of Harness Racing, is on Sunday at the newly redeveloped Tabcorp Park Menangle, which offers state-of-the-art facilities for horses and punters alike. The $750,000 race is the main event on the 10-race program, which features 7 Group 1 races, offering in excess of $2 million worth of prize money and trophies. The main event will be run at 3:40pm and will be shown live on Channel 9, making it the first harness race to be shown on free-to-air TV since 1986. And finally, Casula Powerhouse is the first venue to host a contemporary exhibition showcasing a unique relationship between art and women in sport. The on-site exhibition of mostly contemporary works examines a range of ideas around the female athletes through the arts and cultural lens. Artworks explore gender stereotyping, sexualisation of women's bodies and notions of femininity. The exhibition's aim is to challenge audiences to think more deeply about how differently athletes are treated in society and presented in the media depending on their gender. The exhibition will run until March 24 and is part of Liverpool Council's Women in Sport initiative. And that's all for this week's bulletin. For more information on any of these stories, pick up your local Fairfax community newspaper. I'm KRYSTYNA Pollard. We'll see you next time.